It has been a really weird week of fantasy football, guys. Obviously, the week after Christmas, the week leading up to New Year's, feels like a time warp for everybody, I think. But the show must go on because it is week 17 fantasy football right now. So you're either in the championship, or you're in the semifinals, or you're just playing to get third place, or fifth place, or you're just trying not to get last in the toilet bowl right now, which is totally respectable, and I love to hear it because that's what creates fantasy championships in the future. So today we're going through the top 30 wide receiver rankings for week 17 fantasy football. And I am doing everything I possibly can to get you guys ready to win a fantasy football championship. So please go down there, drop a like on the video, and subscribe to the channel to show your support. Let's go ahead and just dive right into it. So obviously, I've still got Tyreek Hill at number 1. Listen, Tyreek Hill, even last week, which was a little bit of a down week for his standards, I guess, it was still a really good week of fantasy football. I mean, he ended up playing really well, and depending on if you were in full PPR or half PPR, still gave you around the 20-point threshold that he always pretty much hits as long as he's playing in a game. This week against the Ravens, I don't think much changes. I do think that the Ravens obviously showed how dominant they are defensively. Miami, not as dominant, on either side of the ball, I don't think, as Baltimore, but Tyreek Hill just simply is just too explosive for any defense to really can on any particular week, as long as he is healthy and active. CeeDee Lamb still at number 2 and Amon-Ra at number 3. CeeDee taking on the Detroit Lions and Amon-Ra taking on Dallas. So here's the thing is CeeDee Lamb, I think that this week is going to be another good week for him for a lot of reasons. So number 1, CeeDee Lamb had a great week again last week. And that was a big deal because he came back off of a disappointing week against the Buffalo Bills, and he put up another 25-plus point performance depending on your format. You can see what he's still doing. Everything at this point is week to week, but what he's done and the numbers you see on the screen, it's very accurate for what he's been doing all year long, basically. Against the Lions, who are poor against the pass but really good against the run, I think CeeDee's going to have a really big game this week. And then Amon-Ra St. Brown against Dallas, I mean, he really just proves that he's matchup proof. There's really no need for me personally to worry about Amon-Ra St. Brown simply because he's just too important to this offense. I think that they're going to continue to want to establish the run game, but Amon-Ra St. Brown is the target hog. He is the best receiver on this team. Amon-Ra St. Brown comfortably here at number 3. Puka Nacua and Deebo Samuel at 4 and 5. Puka taking on the Giants in New York, and Deebo going to Washington. Puka Nacua, to me, I mean, what he did last week, it really solidifies to me the number 1 wide receiver spot in Los Angeles. That's just the way I feel about Puka at this point. Cooper Kupp is still a good player, but he's, in his 30s now. And Puka Nacua has just been absolutely outstanding as a rookie all season long. Puka Nacua has been tremendous. Against the Giants this week, give me the matchup. And then Deebo, the rebound is coming this week. I feel very confident in this. Listen, he's taking on the Commanders this week who, they obviously lost the Jets last week. Well, the Jets had their way offensively with them too. Washington has a horrific defense. And everybody's getting canned at the end of the year. So that whole team has mailed it in. So the 49ers are wanting to rebound. They're going to come in and absolutely just whoop that you-know-what. It's going to be a bad week for the Commanders. Great week for Deebo Samuel to rebound. Number 6 and 7, Justin Jefferson and A.J. Brown. JJ taking on the Green Bay Packers and A.J. Brown taking on the Cardinals. So Justin Jefferson proved his worth once again last week. And I said this on my Wednesday night live stream, what I got right, what I got wrong. I was discussing how I understand the questions that were leading into this past week with Justin Jefferson. I really did understand it. I mean, this is a player who has not done well since he's returned from injury with a backup quarterback. Totally understand the questions here. The bottom line is, I kept saying, I can't look myself in the mirror the next day if I bench him, and definitely if I tell my audience to bench him. And he proved why last week. He came back and had a great performance. So Jordan Addison, he may very well miss this game. Either way, Green Bay's defense is horrific. So give me Justin Jefferson all day in this matchup against Green Bay. And then A.J. Brown against Arizona, I'll take the matchup again. A.J. Brown just has to fall. I mean, that's just the reality. His ceiling is not as high as it was at the beginning of the year. It's just not. So he has to fall just because his ceiling isn't as high. I would say his floor is still pretty high, though. Like, you could still expect 15 to 17 points from A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown easily number 7 here against the Arizona Cardinals. Nico Collins and Cooper Kupp at 8 and 9. Nico Collins taking on the Titans and Cooper Kupp taking on the Giants. Both of them are great matchups. Nico Collins, I trust more than Cooper Kupp, especially if CJ Stroud comes back. Now, as of the time of this filming, CJ Stroud is not exactly a 100% go this week against the Titans either. He might miss his 3rd straight week. And if that happens, Nico's going to move down again. Because look at what he did last week with Case Keenum. His touchdown saved his week. If CJ Stroud's there, I trust Nico Collins. If he's not there, I don't. So we're totally dependent at this point whether or not CJ Stroud plays. Nico Collins, if CJ goes though, against the Titans, give me him here at 8. And Cooper Kupp at 9, I've still got lots of confidence in him. I just think, to me personally, there's a clear separator between who the better player is in fantasy at this point in the fantasy season, with 1 or 2 weeks left, depending on what week you're going into your playoffs. Cooper Kupp is still a very good option here against the Giants, but I don't think his upside is, his floor is quite as high as Puka Nakua's is. Amari Cooper and Brandon Ayuk at 10 and 11. Amari Cooper taking on the Jets and Brandon Ayuk at Washington. Obviously, Amari Cooper blows the world up last week in fantasy football. It's just a ridiculous week that he put up against the Texans. Helped me move on to my dynasty championship in this particular week. Amari Cooper's a great player. It's the same story, though, and it goes the same every week for me, which is why I feel confident telling you guys the same story about Amari Cooper every week, which is, this is an ultimate dice roll right here. You're either going to get a big performance from Amari Cooper, or you're going to get nothing. Are you willing to take the risk and get nothing? Because he can absolutely do that. Well, the good thing here, and I don't want to jinx it, but Joe Flacco with Amari Cooper's been pretty consistent, along with David Njoku. So maybe Amari Cooper is just going to be consistent for the rest of the year. That would be great for my dynasty team. And I'm sure great for a lot of you guys who definitely moved on with Amari Cooper in the lineup. So against the Jets tonight, I don't love the matchup and he's questionable. We'll have to watch the situation, but I do read that he is preparing to play. And I would play him. Like I said, I am okay taking the dice roll. And then Ayuk against the Commanders, like I said, it goes with the Deebo Samuel. It's just a general idea that this team's going to rebound this week. It's just what I believe. They're taking on the Commanders, they've mailed it in. Their defense is horrific. And the 49ers are pissed. They're going to want to come in and play well. Ayuk, I'm still going to play him most of the time. Mike Evans lands at 12. And Devonta Smith at 13. Evans taking on the Saints. And Devonta Smith taking on the Cardinals. So a lot of you may be wondering, why is Mike Evans this low? You may think it's a really dumb ranking. Now, some of you may already see what I'm about to say. The reason that Mike Evans is this low, which originally, if he was taking on most of the teams, he would have been in the top 6 to 5. Why is he this low? Well, he's taking on the Saints. And his career against Marshawn Lattimore is not good. It's just not good. There's several outcomes that happen. He either gets shut down completely, he gets ejected from the game, which has happened multiple times, or he leaves the game with injury like he did earlier this year. There's voodoo against the Saints. So if I have Mike Evans, I'm worried to play him, to be honest with you. Would I play him? Probably over most guys, which is why he's here at 12. But having him here at 12 is me saying I've got plenty of doubt about him this week. And then Devonta Smith against the Cardinals, it's like the gap between him and A.J. Brown is really not that wide. It's just not. The matchup is great here for both of these guys, and I like having both of them. If I had either one of them, I would probably play them. The thing about Devonta Smith is that his ceiling is not as high as it once was, whereas A.J. Brown's ceiling, I still do believe, is really high. The difference here is that Devonta's floor is pretty high. And that's really what keeps him inside of the top 15 this week against the Cardinals. Jalen Waddle and DJ Moore. Jalen Waddle taking on the Ravens and DJ Moore taking on the Falcons. Now, as of the time of this filming, Jalen Waddle, he's probably not going to play. The only reason he's here is because of the outside chance, because of what Mike McDaniels was saying earlier in the week. Mike McDaniel was saying, we're not gonna rule him out. There's a possibility he might play. I would really struggle to see this one happening, but if he does play, I will play him here at 14, but he's likely not going to be at 100%. Dude's got a reported high ankle injury. It's not a good sign. So keep him here at 14. This ranking could easily move though, and you get updated rankings on Patreon. So join the Patreon today to get updated rankings and to support the channel. And then DJ Moore, originally I thought he was going to get on the injury report this week. He's not. DJ Moore's good to go. Against the Falcons, what I've struggled with DJ Moore recently is his floor hasn't been as high lately, but I still do believe the ceiling is ultimately there. So against the Falcons this week, I could easily see a big game. Justin Fields playing much better football. The Chicago Bears as a whole playing better football. They're ending the year strong. I like the movement that's happening, but there's no question that DJ Moore over the past several weeks, lower floor for sure. I love the ceiling though. That's why he's at 15. Chris Olave and Michael Pittman at 16 and 17. Olave taking on the Buccaneers and Pittman taking on the Raiders. So Olave is just, he's really very similar to Pittman, where it's like, if he plays a full game, you could expect 9 catches for 100 yards, right? Like that's not a question in my mind. The problem is that, the ceiling just isn't like 30 points, whereas like DJ Moore, 30 points, Jalen Waddle, 30 points, Devonta Smith, 30 points, Evans, everybody above them, they can get 30. That's why Olave and Pittman are usually lower on my list, because their ceiling is not really past like 20 to 25. They're still really high floor guys. Like they're very safe plays, and they're both relatively the same. You can see the numbers on the screen for both of them. They both have very similar outputs on a weekly basis, and that's really been the case all year. So if Pittman comes back, I'm playing him over a lot of guys. And Olave this week, I'll play him against the Buccaneers. DK Metcalf and T Higgins at 18 and 19. DK Metcalf taking on the Pittsburgh Steelers, and T Higgins taking on the Chiefs. So DK Metcalf is just in a situation where it's like, with Geno Smith back, like he's clearly the number one target. Now last week, there was an even split of work. Now, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Tyler Lockett, they were just as involved as DK. DK got the touchdown though. So that's a big difference here. And that's really the threat that DK provides every single week. Against the Steelers at home, Joey Porter Jr. likely going to be lined up on him. And Joey Porter Jr., by the way, has been tremendous for the most part in his rookie year. So I could see a world where DK gets locked up a little bit, but DK Metcalf's still super explosive. Got to be inside the top 20. And then T Higgins continues to be a great play without Jamar Chase. And I think that the real reason for it, this is not a target hog guy. He's not really catching a bunch of passes over the middle of the field like he would with Joe Burrow, right? That's not really what he's doing right now. He's catching a lot of big boom, deep balls that are jump ball plays. That's what T Higgins is doing right now. So that's what makes him a boomer bust guy. Against the Chiefs this week, I think it could be a bigger struggle than some of you may think. That's why he's lower this week, because the Chiefs held the Raiders to not a completed pass in last week's game on Christmas Day. They still won the game. They still lost the game. I'm sorry. So my point is that I think T Higgins might struggle because he's not a volume guy. This is a big play guy, so he needs to hit on the big play to make it worth your while. Zay Flowers and Garrett Wilson at 20 and 21. Zay Flowers taking on the Dolphins and Garrett Wilson taking on the Browns tonight. So Zay Flowers to me this week, like, I think that a lot of people are going to be calling for him to be higher this week. I'm actually expecting some comments in this one. So let me know what you think of this ranking, because Zay Flowers went off on Christmas night at a big stage against the perceived best team in the NFL at that time. So the fact that he's still at 20 here is going to throw some people for a loop. And you're going to think I'm stupid for having him ranked here, I'm sure. Here's the reality. You look at most of the season for Zay Flowers, ceiling has been very, very low. That's just a fact. Like, his best game outside of this past one was like 20 to 25 points, and that was one time. Most of the time, he's been a 6 to 10 point guy. His involvement's always been there. He's just a line of scrimmage guy who finally is getting more downfield work, which is why I've got him at 20, which is actually a good ranking to me. I just know that coming off a standalone Monday night game on Christmas night against the perceived best team at the time, and he did that well, I know that I'm going to get some pushback here. And Garrett Wilson, story's always the same. What do you want to do? Do you want to take the shot? I would take the shot. Most of the time, I don't think I would take it very much this week. Against the Browns, this is where Garrett Wilson's basically always ranked. I believe in the player. I don't believe in the offense. I don't believe in the quarterback. That's the problem here with Garrett Wilson. So, do you want to take a shot against the defense with Denzel Ward back? I mean, it's up to you. To me personally, it's a risky shot that doesn't have as much upside as a guy like Amari Cooper does. Calvin Ridley and Devonte Adams. Calvin Ridley taking on the Panthers and Devonte Adams taking on the Colts. Calvin Ridley is a little bit higher than he has been in previous weeks. Finally, because he just had a good game whenever it was garbage time. That was what happened last week against the Buccaneers. And this week against the Panthers, if you look at what the Panthers have done defensively over the year, they're really bad against the run, and they're good against the pass. Well, they're not actually good against the pass. It's just that every team knows that they could run all over them and blow them out. That's how the game script goes. So it's not that I think that the Jags can't throw the ball on the Panthers. They definitely can't. Calvin Ridley just may not need to be used that much because ETN is probably going to have a good game this week. So I think that Calvin Ridley is a good play. Again, boomer bust type of guy. You look at his game log this year, it's a lot of nothing and then like 5 or 6 20-plus point games. Again, Garrett Wilson territory. Take your pick. Do you want to roll the dice or do you not want to this week? I'm a dice roller. Risk is not. I'm a very risk-friendly guy. I can understand wanting to play Calvin Ridley this week. And then Devonte Adams just has to fall. Against the Colts, it's like the matchup is not great. You know, it's hard because I love the player. I love Devonte the player. And I think that last week was an outlier week, but there's just no secret. I've been saying this for months now. His ceiling is just not as high this year because they don't have the quarterback. Do I think that he could get you 15 points? Yeah, I do. For sure. I think he could do that any week. But right now, I can't be confidently putting him much higher than this range. Same goes with Stephon Diggs at 24. You're probably wondering where he's been. He falls at 24 here against the New England Patriots. Oh my gosh. Like, Stephon Diggs just has to fall. Look at like his numbers on the screen. They're looking worse every week. Well, over the past like month to month and a half, that's been the reason. Like, he's getting like 4 catches for 30 yards over the past month. It's been awful for Stephon Diggs. And the other problem that he's going to face this week against the Patriots is not only is their defense looking better and their team is looking better, but Bill Belichick's thing, take away your number one, or at least minimize him. I guess the maybe only good thing is that maybe Bill Belichick doesn't view Stephon Diggs as the number one. That's all we can hope for here. But regardless, Stephon Diggs' ceiling is just not high right now. Rasheed Rice and Jaden Reed, the 2 rookies. Rasheed Rice at 25 against the Bengals, and Jaden Reed at 26 against the Minnesota Vikings. Rasheed Rice, I remember leading up to last week, week 16, and I said, somebody in my audience said, at this point, Rasheed Rice is must start. And I said, I agree. And I still largely agree with that. But it's a very similar situation to like a Calvin Ridley, a Garrett Wilson, where it's like, do you want to take a risk? Because like, he can get you 20 to 25 points, but he can also get you, the good thing about him over a guy like Garrett Wilson is his floor is about 7 to 8 points depending on your format. Because he's just that needed in his offense. I think Mahomes last week was the worst I'd ever seen him as a pro. I don't think that carries over this week against the Bengals. So I like Rasheed Rice still. And then Jaden Reed, if he plays, I simply don't see how he's not inside the top 30. Jaden Reed is in a situation. Watson misses practice again on Wednesday. Dontavian Wicks now out of practice. So it's Romeo Doubs and it's Jaden Reed if he plays. Jaden Reed limited in practice on Wednesday. So it may or may not go. The thing is, if he goes, I am playing Jaden Reed personally in a dynasty league and in a redraft league. I love Jaden Reed this week. I'm taking him, and if he ends up playing, he's likely going to move up this list. 27 and 28, Noah Brown and DeAndre Hopkins. Noah Brown against the Titans and Hopkins against Houston. Noah Brown, I mean, there's just so much going on right now in Houston that it's like, do we get CJ Stroud? Do we get Case Keenum? What is going to happen? And it's like, okay, well, if Case Keenum plays, Noah Brown has been pretty relevant past 2 weeks with him. And last week it was with Nico Collins back. So Noah Brown is definitely the number 2. The problem with, I think with CJ Stroud back, I think it raises his ceiling. But Noah Brown can't be much higher than this just because of all the uncertainty. And the matchup's good, though. And then DeAndre Hopkins, I mean, what is there to say? It's like a couple weeks ago, he had those 2 good games where he was playing really well. And I was getting excited because I was like, I love this player. He's one of my favorite receivers over the last decade. And now he comes back to earth and it's like, disappointing me all over again. So obviously quarterback's an issue here with Tannehill. Maybe Will Levis goes. I don't know. DeAndre Hopkins, very little confidence. Gabe Davis and Jacoby Myers rounding out the top 30. Gabe Davis against the Patriots and Jacoby Myers against the Colts. So my thing on Gabe Davis this week is, yes, every week I have the same sentiment. Do you want to take the risk or not? This is a boomer bust guy. He falls in the Calvin Ridley category, the Garrett Wilson category, the Amari Cooper category, but he's got a really high ceiling. Now this week against the Patriots, as I said, I could see a world where Stephon Diggs is completely taken out of the game. So Gabe Davis could be very involved in this game. And I like that. So if that happens, I could see a world where it's a good situation. And then Jacoby Myers this week, every week he's been involved. I mean, nothing is really changing with his involvement. He's looked very similar to what he did with New England. And he's the wide receiver too most of the time. His ceiling is not very high, which is why he's at 30. But his floor, honestly, at this point, it's a good 7 to 8 points, which is just not very bad. Like, that's not a bad floor. So against the Colts this week, if Devonta gets stifled again, Jacoby Myers definitely belongs inside the top 30. So let me know what you think of the rankings in the comments below and what questions you need answered for Week 17 Fantasy Football. And if you want to see the top 12 defense rankings for Week 17 Fantasy Football, click on this video right here and become a patron today to see my top 32 defensive rankings and top 50 wide receiver rankings for Week 17.